In part one, a simple Nigerian waitress in Seoul saw the wrong man die in a dark alley. The killer didn't erase her, he hired her. Kang Jae-hyun locked Lena in his penthouse, promised not to touch her, then made her fall for the very danger she should have run from. The night everything exploded, she woke up tied in a van with a gun to her head and a stranger saying, "Your precious Jae-hyun sold you out." Now this is part two, the night she learns what he really is and why the whole city whispers about the Ghost King. New here? You just dropped into the middle of one of the most twisted love stories on YouTube. Hit pause, check the description, and watch part one first, or you'll be completely lost. The cold bit into Lena's knees first, sharp gravel pressing through the thin fabric of her pants. Her wrists burned where the rope cut into her skin, and every breath she took felt like swallowing shards of glass. The night air was freezing, carrying the scent of rain and something metallic. Blood, maybe, or rust from the old warehouse behind her. She'd stopped crying. There were no tears left, just a hollow, aching emptiness where her heart used to be. Your precious Jae-hyun sold you out, sweetheart. Made a deal to save his own skin. You were always just a pawn. The words circled her mind like vultures, each repetition tearing open the wound a little deeper. She trusted him, after everything, after the lies, the manipulation, the files with her name on them. Some foolish, desperate part of her had still believed he might care, that the way he looked at her meant something, that his promise to keep her safe had been real. But it wasn't. It had never been. Behind her, the men were talking. Their voices carried through the darkness, low and urgent, and something about their tone made Lena's pulse quicken despite her despair. "We need to move. Now." The boss said to wait. Forget what the boss said. If he finds us before we finish this, we're dead. All of us. A pause, then another voice, shakier, younger. "You really think he'll come? For her? Are you insane? You know who we're dealing with. The Ghost King doesn't let anyone take what's his. We have maybe 10 minutes before." "Don't say that name." The sharp hiss cut through the night. "You want to summon him? You know what they say. Speak his name and he appears, like a curse." "It's too late for superstition. The council wants her dead, and if we don't deliver, they'll feed us to him piece by piece. You've heard the stories, what he does to traitors, what he did to the park crew when they crossed the line." Lena's breath caught in her throat. Ghost King. Council. The words meant nothing to her, but the fear in these men's voices was unmistakable. These were killers, men who dragged her from a penthouse, thrown her in a van, and told her she was going to die, and yet they were terrified. Of what? Of who? A hand grabbed her hair, yanking her head back. Pain exploded across her scalp, and she bit down on her lip to keep from crying out. Above her, one of the men loomed, his face shadowed, a gun gleaming dully in his hand. "Enough waiting," he said, his voice cold. "The council gave clear orders. The witness dies tonight. Let's finish this before." The gunshot came from nowhere. Lena screamed as the man holding her hair jerked backward, blood spraying across the gravel. His body hit the ground with a wet, heavy thud, and suddenly the night erupted into chaos. Shouts, running footsteps, the metallic click of weapons being drawn. And then, cutting through it all, a voice she'd prayed she'd never hear again. "Get away from her." Jaehyun stepped out of the shadows like something born from nightmares. Blood streaked across his face, dark against his pale skin. His black suit was torn at the shoulder, the expensive fabric stained and ruined. His knuckles were split and raw, and there was a cut above his left eye that dripped steadily, painting a red line down his cheek. But it was his eyes that made Lena's heart stop. Wild, burning, filled with a rage so pure and absolute it didn't seem human. This wasn't the man who'd sat across from her in a restaurant and made promises. This wasn't the calm, controlled mafia boss who moved through his penthouse like a king in his castle. This was something else. Something deadly. He moved through the remaining kidnappers like death itself. The first man raised a gun, and Jaehyun was already there, his hand closing around the man's wrist with a sickening crack. The gun clattered to the ground, and Jaehyun drove his elbow into the man's throat, dropping him instantly. The second tried to run, and Jaehyun shot him in the leg without even looking. The man screamed, swallowed by the night. The third pulled a knife, lunging desperately, and Jaehyun caught his arm mid-swing, twisted, and sent the blade plunging into the man's own stomach. The man gasped, eyes wide with shock, and Jaehyun shoved him away like discarded trash. It was over in seconds. 4 men down. 4 men who'd been about to kill her. And then Jaehyun was running toward her, his face twisted with something that looked almost like panic. Lena! Her name tore from his throat, raw and desperate. Lena, look at me, look at me! He dropped to his knees in front of her, his hands shaking as they reached for the ropes binding her wrists. His fingers fumbled with the knots, slipping on the blood, his blood, their blood, she couldn't tell. And she could hear his breathing, ragged and uneven, like he'd been running for miles. The ropes fell away. Her wrists throbbed with sudden painful relief, and she gasped, tears flooding her eyes before she could stop them. Jaehyun's hands moved to her face, cupping her cheeks, his thumbs wiping at her tears with a gentleness that felt completely at odds with the violence he'd just unleashed. Are you hurt? His voice cracked. Did they know? Tell me you're okay. Please. She stared at him, her mind spinning, unable to process any of it. He was here. He'd come for her. After everything, after she'd been told he'd sold her, after she'd believed he'd thrown her away like garbage, he was here, kneeling in front of her with blood on his hands and terror in his eyes. You? The word scraped out of her throat, barely a whisper. They said you, they told me. I know what they told you. His jaw clenched, his hands still cradling her face, like she might disappear if he let go. I know, Lena, I know. She pulled away from him, stumbling backward, and the hurt that flashed across his face was so raw it made her chest ache. Don't, she choked out. Don't touch me. I can't. I don't. Lena. They said you traded me. The words exploded out of her, months of fear and confusion and betrayal erupting all at once. They said you made a deal, that you sold me to save yourself. And I believed them, Jaehyun. I believed them because you've done nothing but lie to me since the moment we met. Jaehyun stood slowly, his hands falling to his sides. For a moment, he just stared at her, his chest heaving, and she could see something crumbling behind his eyes. You believed them, he said quietly, and his voice was so full of pain it felt like a physical blow. After everything, you believed I would do that to you. What else was I supposed to think? Lena's voice broke, tears streaming down her face. You kept me prisoner. You lied about why you hired me. You had files on me. Surveillance photos, reports. You've been watching me since before we even met, and you never explained any of it. You just kept telling me to trust you while you controlled every part of my life. Because I was trying to keep you alive. Jaehyun's control shattered, his voice rising, echoing through the empty lot. Do you have any idea what you saw that night? What you stumbled into? Those men didn't kill that person on a whim, Lena. It was an execution, ordered by people so powerful they could make you disappear and no one would ever ask questions. And the moment you witnessed it, you became a liability that needed to be eliminated. Then why didn't you eliminate me? Lena shot back. You had the chance. That first night in the alley, you could have killed me right there, and no one would have known. Because I couldn't. The admission tore out of him like a confession, and suddenly he was moving toward her, closing the distance between them in 3 long strides. I was supposed to. I had orders. Find the witness. Make sure she never talks. End the problem quietly and move on. That's what I do, Lena. That's who I am. He stopped inches from her, his eyes burning into hers. But I looked at you and I couldn't do it. I looked at you and saw something I'd forgotten existed. Something real, something worth protecting. Lena's breath caught. They were so close now she could feel the heat radiating off his body, could smell the copper scent of blood mixed with his cologne. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a chaotic rhythm that made it hard to think. You don't protect people, she whispered. You control them. Yes. His voice dropped, rough and raw. I do, because control is the only way I know how to keep people safe. The moment I let my guard down, the moment I stop watching, planning, manipulating, people die, and I couldn't. His hands came up, hovering near her face, trembling with the effort of not touching her. I couldn't let that be you. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything they weren't saying. Lena's hands were shaking, her whole body vibrating with exhaustion and fear, and something else. Something dangerous that coiled hot and desperate in her chest every time he looked at her like that. And you believed them, Jaehyun said again, softer now, and the hurt in his voice made her want to scream. When they told you I'd sold you out, you believed it without question. After I pulled you into my home, after I promised you were safe with me, you thought I'd just throw you away. What was I supposed to think? Lena's voice cracked. They were so sure, so confident, and everything about you, everything you've done, it all fits. You're a liar, Jaehyun. You've lied to me from the beginning. Why wouldn't you lie about this too? Something broke in his expression. His hands dropped and he took a step back, putting distance between them. When he spoke again, his voice was hollow. You're right. I am a liar. I've lied to you about who I am, what I do, why you're really here. I've manipulated and controlled and kept you in the dark because I thought that was the only way to protect you. He met her eyes, and the devastation in his gaze made her chest tighten. But I never, not once, planned to betray you, and the fact that you could believe I would. He trailed off, shaking his head, and turned away. Lena's throat closed. She wanted to scream at him. She wanted to hit him. She wanted to demand answers, to make him explain everything, to force him to be honest for once in his life. But more than anything, terrifyingly, she wanted to close the distance between them and make sure he was real, that he'd actually come for her, that whatever this twisted, dangerous thing was between them hadn't been a lie. I thought they'd killed you, Jaehyun said suddenly, his back still to her. His voice was so quiet, she almost didn't hear it. When I got to the penthouse and you were gone, when I saw the blood on the floor and the security footage showed them dragging you out, I thought... He stopped, his shoulders tense, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Lena's heart twisted. Jaehyun, I tore through half the city looking for you. He turned back to face her, and she'd never seen him look so raw, so utterly undone. I went to every contact I had, called in every favor, threatened people I've worked with for years. I didn't sleep, didn't eat. I just kept moving because if I stopped, if I let myself think about what they might be doing to you, I was going to lose my mind. Tears blurred her vision. Why? Why would you do that? Because you're mine to protect, he said, and there was something almost desperate in the way he said it. Because I made you a promise, and I don't break my promises. Because, he swallowed hard, his jaw working, because the thought of you hurt, scared, thinking I'd abandoned you, it was unbearable. Lena shook her head, confusion and fear, and something dangerously close to hope warring inside her. I don't understand you. I don't understand any of this. I don't understand it either. Jaehyun's voice softened, and he took a tentative step toward her. I've spent years not caring about anyone or anything beyond survival and power. That's how you stay alive in this world. You don't form attachments. You don't let people in. You certainly don't risk everything for a woman who saw too much and should have been eliminated weeks ago. Then why did you? I don't know. The confession seemed to cost him something. All I know is that the moment I saw you in that alley, something changed. And every day since then, every moment I've spent with you, it's been getting harder to remember why I'm supposed to be keeping my distance. The air between them felt electric, charged with a tension that made Lena's skin prickle. They were standing close again. When had that happened? Close enough that she could see the way his chest rose and fell with each breath, could see the faint tremor in his hands. I shouldn't have come for you, Jaehyun said, his voice barely above a whisper. I should have let them think I'd traded you. Convinced the council I was still loyal. Let you disappear and forget you ever existed. That would have been smarter, safer, better for both of us. But you didn't, Lena breathed. No. His eyes locked on hers, dark and intense. I didn't, because apparently when it comes to you, I can't do what's smart. I can only do what feels necessary. Her breath hitched. And what feels necessary? keeping you alive, keeping you close, keeping you. He stopped himself, jaw clenching, and looked away. I don't know what I'm doing, Lena. I just know I can't let you go. The silence that followed was thick, weighted with everything they weren't saying. Lena's wrists still ached, where the ropes had cut into them, and she lifted her hands unconsciously, examining the raw, reddened skin. Jaehyun's gaze dropped to her wrists, and his expression shifted, something dark and dangerous flashing through his eyes. Let me see, he said quietly. It's fine. Let me see, Lena. There was no command in his voice this time, just a quiet plea that made her chest ache. Slowly, she held out her hands. Jaehyun closed the distance between them, his movements careful, deliberate, like he was approaching something fragile that might shatter if he moved too quickly. His fingers wrapped around her wrists, gentle, so impossibly gentle, and he turned them over, examining the damage. I'm sorry, he murmured, his thumbs brushing feather light over the rope burns. I should have gotten there sooner. I should have. You came, Lena interrupted, her voice unsteady. That's what matters. His eyes lifted to hers, and the vulnerability in them stole her breath. Is it? She didn't know how to answer that. Didn't know how to reconcile the man who'd kept her prisoner with the man who'd just torn through a group of armed killers to save her. Didn't know how to make sense of the way her heart raced when he looked at her, even now, even after everything. Your hands are shaking, she said instead, because it was easier than confronting the other feelings churning inside her. Jaehyun glanced down at his hands, still holding her wrists, still trembling slightly, and a bitter smile crossed his face. I thought I'd lost you. I don't. I'm not used to that feeling. What feeling? Fear. The word seemed to cost him something. I haven't been afraid of anything in years, and then you were gone, and I was terrified. Lena's throat tightened. She should pull away, should put distance between them, should remember that this man was dangerous, that he'd lied to her, that being close to him would only bring more pain. But she didn't move, and neither did he. Why did you come for me? She whispered. Really, not the official reason. Not because I'm a liability or a witness or whatever else I'm supposed to be. Why did you really come? Jaehyun's jaw worked, his grip on her wrists tightening just slightly. For a long moment, he didn't answer, and she thought maybe he wouldn't, that he'd deflect or change the subject or retreat behind that cold, controlled mask he wore so well. But then he said, so quietly she almost didn't hear it, because I couldn't let them take you. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. His eyes met hers, and there was something raw and desperate in them. I don't know how to explain this, Lena. I don't have words for what you've become. I just know that the thought of you hurt, of you believing I'd betrayed you, of you disappearing from my life, it was unbearable. And that terrifies me more than anything the council could do. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. They were so close now. When had they gotten this close? That she could feel his breath on her face, could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, could count every drop of blood still clinging to his skin. I don't know if I can trust you, she admitted, her voice breaking. I know. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you. I know that too. His thumb traced a gentle circle on the inside of her wrist, right over her pulse. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it anyway. The words hung between them, heavy with promise and impossibility. Lena's breath came faster, her body hyper-aware of every point where they were almost touching, every inch of space that separated them. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was everything she should be running from, but she didn't run. Jaehyun? A sound cut through the night, the crunch of footsteps on gravel. Both of them froze, and Jaehyun's hand immediately went to the gun at his hip, his body shifting to shield Lena's. Stay behind me, he said, his voice dropping back into that cold, controlled tone. But it was too late. A man stepped out of the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit that marked him as one of Jaehyun's people. Lena recognized him vaguely from the penthouse, one of the men who'd always stood silent and watchful in the background. But there was nothing silent about him now. He held a gun in his hand, and it was pointed directly at Lena. Touching reunion. the man said, his voice carrying a mocking edge. Really? I'm almost moved. The great Ghost King, brought to his knees by a foreign waitress who saw too much. The council is going to love this. Lena went absolutely still. Ghost King. That name again. The one the kidnappers had whispered with such fear. She looked at Jae-hyun, and the expression on his face made her blood run cold. He'd gone completely rigid, his eyes locked on the man with the gun, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw genuine fear flash across his features. Min-jin, Jae-hyun said, his voice deadly calm. Put the gun down. I don't think so, sir. Min-jin's smile widened. You see, the council has been very patient with you, very understanding about your attachment to the witness. They thought maybe you were playing a long game, that you'd eventually do what needed to be done. But you didn't, did you? You kept her, protected her, broke every rule we have because you couldn't bring yourself to eliminate her. I said, put the gun down. Or what? You'll kill me? Your own man. Min-jin laughed, and it was a cold, bitter sound. That's the thing about legends, Ghost King. Eventually, someone comes along who isn't afraid of them anymore. Someone who sees the cracks, the weaknesses. And you. He gestured at Lena with the gun. She's your weakness. Lena's mind reeled. Ghost King. The council. Eliminate her. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture so terrible she could barely comprehend it. What is he talking about? She whispered, looking at Jae-hyun. What does he mean, Ghost King? Jae-hyun's jaw clenched, but he didn't answer. Didn't look at her. All his focus was on the man with the gun. Min-jin laughed again. She doesn't know? Oh, this is perfect. You've been playing house with her for weeks, and she doesn't even know who you really are. He turned his attention to Lena, his smile cruel. Allow me to enlighten you, Miss Lena, the man standing next to you, the one who's been so sweetly protecting you. He's the Ghost King, the council's executioner, the man they call when someone needs to disappear. He's killed more people than you could count, all of them for the crime of knowing too much or seeing too much, or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Lena felt like the ground had dropped out from under her. No, that's not. It's true. Min-jin's voice was almost gleeful now. Every whisper you've heard about the Ghost King, every story about bodies that never get found, about witnesses who vanish into thin air, that's him. That's your precious Jae-hyun. And you know the best part? You were supposed to be just another job, another loose end to tie up. But he couldn't do it. For the first time in his illustrious career, the Ghost King grew a conscience. Lena, Jae-hyun started, turning toward her, but she stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth. Is it true? Her voice was barely a whisper. Are you? Is that who you are? The silence that followed was answer enough. Oh, this is delicious, Min-jin said, his gun still trained on Lena. The witness finds out her protector is actually the monster she should have feared all along. How does it feel, Miss Lena, knowing you've been sleeping under the same roof as Seoul's most prolific killer? Enough. Jae-hyun's voice cut through the night like a blade. He stepped forward, putting himself directly between Lena and the gun. You want to take her? You go through me first. That can be arranged, Min-jin said. Though the council would prefer I bring her in alive. They have questions about what she saw, about who else she might have told, about how much the Ghost King revealed during his little domestic fantasy. The council can go to hell. Careful, sir. That's treason. I stopped caring about the council the moment they put a price on her head. Jae-hyun's hand moved slowly toward his weapon. And I'm only going to say this once more. Walk away. Pretend you never found us, or I will make sure you regret every choice that led you here. Min-jin's smile faded. You'd kill one of your own men? For her? In a heartbeat. For a moment, no one moved. The three of them stood frozen in a tableau of tension and betrayal, the night air thick with unspoken threats. Then Min-jin's expression hardened. The council was right. You've gone soft. The Ghost King is dead, killed by a woman who should have been erased the moment she witnessed that execution. And now, he never finished the sentence. Jae-hyun moved, fast as lightning, his hand closing around the gun. But Min-jin was ready, his finger already on the trigger. The gunshot exploded through the night, impossibly loud, echoing off the warehouse walls. Lena screamed, someone fell, and then everything went black. And that is where part 2 ends. What do you think happened after that gunshot? Who fell? The Ghost King who risked everything? The traitor who betrayed him? Or the woman who witnessed too much? Tell us in the comments. I want part 3, and let us know what you expect to happen next. Will Lena ever trust Jaehyun again now that she knows his true identity? Can the Ghost King protect her from an entire council of killers? And who else is working against them from the inside? Your comments decide how fast part 3 comes out. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. The story isn't over. Not even close. See you in part 3 if you dare to find out what happens next.